You are listening to Catholic Family Podcast.
"What is your favorite book, Dominic?" asked Mrs. Smith. It was the English literature class, and Mrs. Smith had a discussion of favorite books as an introduction to her lesson plan. "Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire," replied Dominic automatically. "Why is it your favorite, Dominic?" she asked again, trying to figure out why anyone, let alone a Catholic student, would indulge in a book filled with violence, witchcraft, and basically all things evil, which directly goes against everything Catholic. She had to get to the bottom of it, but didn't know how. All she knew was that she had to deal with the situation calmly and carefully. "I don't know, teacher," he says, as he tries to remember his reason for liking the book. "I like Harry," he says at last, half hoping his teacher would not ask him any more questions. Seeing his reaction, Mrs. Smith decides to ask him one last question. "What do you like about Harry?" she asks. I like the different magic tricks that he learns to do," he replies. "Ah," thought Mrs. Smith, "he doesn't particularly like Harry, but likes the fact that Harry can learn to perform magic tricks." She therefore decides to give herself a day to do more research on the topic rather than to just state her opinion on the matter, bearing in mind the verse in the Bible that states, "If thou have understanding, answer thy neighbor, but if not, let thy hand be upon thy mouth, lest thou be surprised in an unskilful word, and be confounded." She manages a "Okay, thank you, Dominic, for telling us about your favorite book," and carries on with her lesson. The next day she tells them the following story of Saint Cyprian, who was a sorcerer before he got converted to Christianity. In the reign of Decius there lived in Antioch a certain philosopher and renowned sorcerer whose name was Cyprian, a native of Carthage. Springing from impious parents in his very childhood, he was dedicated by them to the service of the pagan god Apollo. At the age of 7, he was given over to magicians for the study of sorcery and demonic wisdom. At the age of 10, he was sent by his parents as preparation for a sorcerer's career to Mount Olympus, which the pagans call the dwelling of the gods. On this mountain, Cyprian studied all manner of diabolical arts. He mastered various demonic transformations, learned how to change the nature of the air, to bring up winds, produce thunder and rain, disturb the waves of the sea, cause damage to gardens, vineyards, and fields, to send diseases and plagues upon people, and in general he learned a ruinous wisdom and diabolical activity filled with evil. In this place he saw a numberless legion of demons, with the Prince of Darkness at their head. Some stood before him, others served him, still others cried out in praise of their prince, and some were sent into the world in order to corrupt people. Here he likewise saw in their false forms the pagan gods and goddesses, and also divers phantoms and spectres, the invocation of which he learnt in a strict 40-day fast. He ate only after the setting of the sun, and not bread or anything else, but only acorns from oak trees. When he was 15 years old, he began to receive lessons from 7 great sorcerers. From them he learned many demonic secrets. Then he went to the city of Argos, where, having served the goddess Juno for a time, he learned many practices of deception from her priests. He lived also in Tauropolis, in the service of the goddess Diana, and from there he went to Sparta, where he learned how to call forth the dead from the graves and to force them to speak by means of various spells. At the age of 20, Cyprian came to Egypt, and in the city of Memphis he learned yet greater charms. In his 30th year, he went to the Chaldeans, and having learnt astrology there, he finished his studies. After this, he returned to Antioch, being perfect in all evil doing. Thus he became a sorcerer, magician, and destroyer of souls, a great friend and faithful slave of the Prince of Hell. From this it is evident what kind of man Cyprian was. As a friend of the demons, he performed all their works, causing evil to people and deceiving them. Living in Antioch, he turned many people away to every kind of lawless deed. He killed many with poisons and magic, and slaughtered young men and maidens as sacrifices for the demons. He instructed many in his ruinous sorcery. Some he taught to fly in the air, others to sail in boats on the clouds, still others to walk on water. By all the pagans he was glorified as a chief priest and most wise servant of their vile gods. Many turned to him in their needs, and he helped them by means of the demonic power with which he was filled. At that time there lived a pagan youth named Aglaea, the son of wealthy and renowned parents. He lived luxuriously, giving himself entirely over to the vanity of this world. Once he came across a Christian girl called Justina who was on her way to church, and he was struck by her beauty. He immediately asked her for her hand in marriage, to which she declined, having given herself to Christ as his bride. Aglaia didn't take too kindly to her reply and asked Cyprian to perform a magic trick that will lure Justina into liking him. Cyprian agrees and calls on an evil spirit to torment the young maiden into accepting Aglaia's request. The demon, however, was put to flight as soon as Justina made the sign of the cross. He returned to Cyprian with the sad news that he had accomplished nothing. Cyprian asked him why he had not been able to conquer the maiden. The demon, even against his will, revealed the truth. I could not conquer her because I saw on her a certain sign of which I was afraid. Then Cyprian called a yet more malicious demon and sent him to tempt Justina. He went and did much more than the first one, but she armed herself with fervent prayer and mortified herself with abstinence and fasting, eating only bread and water. She thus conquered the devil and banished him with shame. Then Cyprian called one of the princes of the demons, informed him about the weakness of the demons he had sent, who could not conquer a single maiden, and asked help from him. This prince of demons severely reproached the other demons for their lack of skill in this matter and promised Cyprian that he would do the job for him. He took on the appearance of a woman and went to Justina. He began to converse piously with her, as if desiring to follow the example of her virtuous life and her chastity. However, through their conversation, it became evident to Justina that it was the evil one trying to persuade her. Without continuing this conversation, she immediately fled to the defense of the cross of the Lord and placed its honorable sign on her forehead, and her heart she turned to Christ her bridegroom. The devil immediately vanished with yet greater shame than the first two demons. In great disturbance, the proud prince of the demons returned to Cyprian, who, finding out that he had not managed to do anything, said to him, "Can it be that even you, a prince powerful and more skilful than others in such matters, could not conquer the maiden? Tell me by what weapon she battles with you, and how she makes powerless your mighty power." Being conquered by the power of God, the devil unwillingly acknowledged, "We cannot behold the sign of the cross but flee from it because it scorches us like fire and banishes us far away." Cyprian became angry at the devil because he had put him to shame, and reproaching the demon, he said, "Such is your power that even a weak virgin conquers you. Now I have discovered your infirmity. For if you fear even the shadow of the cross and tremble at the name of Christ, then what will you do when Christ himself comes to you? If you cannot conquer those who sign themselves with the sign of the cross, then whom will you tear away from the hands of Christ? Now I have understood how powerless you are. You can't even take revenge. Listening to you, wretched one, I have been deceived, because I believed your tricks. Depart from me, accursed one, depart, for I must entreat the Christians that they might have mercy on me. I must appeal to pious people that they might deliver me from perdition and be concerned over my salvation. Depart, depart from me, lawless one, enemy of truth, adversary and hater of every good thing." Having heard this, the devil threw himself on Cyprian in order to kill him. Attacking him, he began to beat and strangle him. Finding no defense anywhere and not knowing how to help himself and be delivered from the fierce hands of the demon, Cyprian, already scarcely alive, remembered the sign of the cross by the power of which Justina had opposed all the demon's powers, and he cried out, "O God of Justina, help me." Then raising his hand, he made the sign of the cross, and the devil immediately leaped away from him like an arrow shot from a bow. Gaining courage, Cyprian became bolder, and calling on the name of Christ, he signed himself with the sign of the cross, and stubbornly opposed the demon, cursing and reproaching him. As to the devil, standing far away from him and not daring to draw near to him, out of fear of the sign of the cross and the name of Christ, he threatened Cyprian in every manner, saying, "Christ will not deliver you out of my hands." Then, after long and fierce attacks on Cyprian, the demon roared like a lion and went away. Cyprian took all his books of magic and went to the Christian bishop Anthemus. Falling to the feet of the bishop, he entreated him to have mercy on him and to give him holy baptism. Knowing that Cyprian was a great sorcerer feared by all, the bishop thought that he had come to him with some kind of trick, and therefore he refused him, saying, "You do much evil among the pagans. Leave the Christians in peace. lest you speedily perish." Then Cyprian, with tears, confessed everything to the bishop and gave him his books to be burned. Seeing his humility, the bishop instructed him and taught him the holy faith, and then commanded him to prepare for baptism, and his books he burnt before all the believing citizens. Cyprian wept over his sins, sprinkled ashes on his head, and sincerely repented, calling out to the true God for the cleansing of his iniquities. He was baptized the next day, and on the 8th day after his baptism he was made a reader by the bishop. On the 20th day he was made subdeacon, and on the 30th day a deacon, and in a year he was ordained priest. Cyprian completely changed his life. With every day he increased his struggles, and constantly weeping over his previous evil deeds, he perfected himself and ascended from virtue to virtue. Soon he was made bishop, and in this rank he led such a holy life that he equaled many great saints. As Mrs. Smith finished the story, she saw Dominic in deep thought. "What are you thinking, Dominic?" she asked. "Teacher, would it have been okay if a sorcerer performed magic tricks to help somebody in a good way? Like if he helped cure somebody of an illness?" he asked curiously. Mrs. Smith said a silent prayer in her head, asking God and Mother Mary to help her to answer this question correctly. She said, "Sorcerers cast spells or do magic tricks with the help of evil spirits, as we have seen in the story of Saint Cyprian earlier. Now, who are evil spirits? Evil spirits are demons, fallen angels who were created naturally by God but became evil through the sin of pride, as they thought themselves to be mightier than God and refused to serve Him. They were therefore separated from God and were cast into hell. Now they hate everything that is related to God, especially all of God's creation, which includes us. They roam the earth, trying to tempt, test, and lead us away from God. So to answer your question, Dominic, no, they can't and will not do anything that is good for anyone, especially us, even if it includes curing anyone of an illness. If they do cure anyone or do any good to anyone, even in the slightest way, it is to deceive us into following them and to separate us from God. As St. Peter has told us in the Bible, "Be sober and watch, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, goeth about seeking whom he may devour." Moreover, if we need someone to cure us of an illness, or we need help in any way, we should ask God, who is mightier than anyone, to help us. He is our God, He is our Father, and will do everything to help, protect, and guide us here on earth, to lead a life that will help us reunite with Him in heaven after we die. This is what we should live for, to be forever with God in heaven after we die. So let's not do anything that will separate us from God. This story is an example of how evil is starting to penetrate into practically everything that we perceive in the world today. Life seems to have gotten more difficult for Catholics around the world. The conceptualization of good and evil are twisted and turned in a number of ways, getting people to change their stance on various issues. Most people these days seem to be developing an accept more and scrutinize less attitude, but what's worse is that our children are affected in the process. So while adults accept this circus of a world we now live in, our children are simultaneously being exposed to these crazy thoughts and ideas, which gets them to behave like elephants on a drum as well. Children from a young age develop behavior patterns similar to whom they consider to be their role models. These are the people who make an impression on them and who normally fall under the parent or primary caregiver category. However, as they grow, they may choose a different personality presented to them in the form of extended family members, friends, or even wacky television superheroes to emulate. As Catholic parents and teachers, we can set an example of leading our own lives with the sole purpose of knowing, loving, and serving God so that we can be with Him in heaven after we die. As St. Teresa of Lisieux says, "The world's thy ship and not thy home." Therefore, heaven is what we should strive for, no matter how difficult it is and how many obstacles we come across on the way. Also, as Saint Catherine of Siena says, "The path to heaven lies through heaven, and all the way to heaven is heaven." Thus, all the difficulties that we face in life only increase our chances of gaining heaven, and we should be happy if not grateful for it. In fact, according to Saint Rose of Lima, who says, Apart from the cross, there is no ladder by which we may get to heaven. And Saint Benedict Labre, who says, "In this world we are all in a valley of tears. Our consolation is not here. We shall have it eternally in paradise if we suffer tribulations on earth." Many saints, in addition to Saint Therese, Saint Catherine, Saint Rose, and Saint Benedict, have roamed the world encouraging people to choose a path that leads them to heaven and to stick to it no matter how difficult that path becomes to tread upon. These saints themselves have led a life that was completely focused on God, spending most of their time here on earth collecting rewards in heaven. Archangels like Saint Michael and Saint Raphael, saints like John Vianney and Saint Gemma Galgani should be called the real superheroes who, as we know, have fought against the most undeniable bad guys in the business, the devils. Saint Michael bravely fought and was triumphant in the battle against Lucifer and the fallen angels. Saint Raphael accompanied Tobias on his journey and conquered the demon Asmodeus. Saint Gemma Galgani was constantly tormented by the devil, but through the grace of God and her will, all the devil's temptations were made in vain. She learned the best way to defend herself against the demons was through prayer, which she practiced with all the ardor of her soul. Saint John Vianney, a saintly priest who was known for his encounters with the devil, was frequently attacked because of the many sinners that were reconciled to God on his account. He would often get attacked the most the night before a big sinner came to him for confession, but the devil would immediately depart as soon as Saint John Vianney made the sign of the cross. These saints, among many, have thus proven their resilience to do good for the love and glory of God. It is therefore necessary for us to get acquainted with and also teach our children about how a lot of saints have acquired a number of virtues through their lives spent here on earth. That will help encourage us all to develop a number of virtues as we grow and learn to deal with the world around us. Parents and teachers who follow the lives of saints and live in accordance to the rules of the Catholic faith urge their children to do the same. In the school setting, teachers should start the school year with an introduction or reintroduction to the 10 Commandments together with the students when classroom rules are created. This should also be reinforced on a daily basis in the form of reminders and rewards when a certain behavior needs to be encouraged or altered in order to allow students to create a behavioral template for themselves while staying on the path that leads them to God. A religious curriculum can be created alongside the regular curriculum based on the life of the saint of a particular day, along with the dedication to the holy devotion of a particular month. For example, a special rosary can be said at the start of the day by each child in the class during the month of May, which is the month devoted to our Blessed Mother. Also, powerful devotions like the 33-day method of prayer and meditation created by Saint Louis de Montfort can also be introduced a little before the month of May so as to finish on the feast of the Queenship of Mother Mary on the 31st of May, for students to follow with their parents at home, while the fundamentals of the devotion can be discussed in school due to the time constraints at school. The method, which is a total consecration to Jesus through Mary, is based on the principles of living completely for God while leaving the attractions, worries, and temptations of the world in order to offer up one's prayers, sacrifices, and sufferings for the greater glory of God is something that can be taught to students. The teacher can then follow up this devotion with a talk about the life of a saint of that particular day. The life of Saint Bernardine of Siena can be spoken about, for example, whose feast day is on the 20th of May. The teacher can then highlight the virtues of each saint, various Catholic doctrines followed by them, and the prayers that they say every day through role plays, character dress-up games, and quizzes. At the end of the week, the students and the teacher can create a chart highlighting the virtues of each saint that they learned throughout the week, which can be put up in the classroom. For example, they could make a chart to highlight the virtues of our Blessed Mother, which include charity towards God, charity for her neighbor, poverty, obedience, prayer, patience, hope, chastity, faith, and humility, which they may learn about on the feast of the Queenship of the Blessed Mother on the 31st of May. The first period of each day can be set aside for these practices, in addition to general catechism, which should be taught as well. Teachers can refer to catechism books like Baltimore Catechism and My Catholic Faith while creating the yearly or quarterly curriculum. Topics can vary from the teachings on the existence of God, divine revelation, Holy Scripture, the Ten Commandments, Beatitudes, the commandments of the Church, the sacraments, the sacramentals, teachings on grace, and various other Catholic teachings to deepen the students' understanding of the faith. The last period can also be used for meditations, coupled with some time set aside for students to calmly make their examination of conscience for the day. Younger students can be introduced to the good book and the bad book technique of making note of all their good deeds in the good book and their bad deeds in their bad book. They will need to label these books accordingly to ensure no one reads them. This way they can get acquainted with their shortcomings and make changes to their behavior if necessary, with the hope of simultaneously adding up merits in heaven. Thus, through these practices, we pray that our children create a foundation of values for themselves that will aid them in discerning what is right and what is wrong, something that they can constantly refer to at the start of an action, which will motivate them to do what is right and to stop them from doing what is wrong. This, we know, can only be achieved through the grace of God, but as guardians at home and at school, it is the moral responsibility of both parents and teachers to give them this moral boost. Therefore, let us seek our Lord and our Blessed Mother's help in directing us to lead the children entrusted to us in the right path, as we remember to consecrate them to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Immaculate Heart of Mother Mary on a daily basis.